Weary Illarna led her maidens through the winding roads that cut jaggedly through the agricultural heartlands of her beautiful country. At first it seemed like an out-of-season frost, but by the third day she knew something was not right, as the frigid winds that had accompanied them from the capital had now gone altogether, leaving behind a stale yet ever-growing heat that lingered in the air, and well into the night, cattle huddled around what shade or water they could find, while wild animals could not be found at all outside the small parcels of woodlands that remained. Feeling a welcome breeze on her face, Illarna looked up and wiped the sweat from her brow. By the light, she thought, as her eyes fell on the dark pillars of smoke billowing high in the sky and filling the horizon. "Wildfire," she shouted, thrusting her hand in the air to stop the maidens behind her. "What are your orders?" Sylvain said, stopping beside her. Considering her options, Illarna looked back for a moment, looking over the state of her maidens. "I'm unsure. We are already exhausted from the heat." "This is true, yet I'm guessing there is more to it." "Well, if I'm right, there should be a town about half an hour down this road. Now, thanks to that change in the wind we just had, it will be right in the path of the wildfire." "Well, I suppose there is only one thing to do." Illarna smiled, knowing what she was about to do would be risky. "Let's go." Raising her open hand back in the air, Illarna signalled the maidens to push forward at full speed. Arriving at the main entrance to Rennum, Illarna knew that time was of the essence, that she would need to be quick in assessing the situation. The fire was already closer than she would have liked. Its dark columns of smoke billowed and boiled far overhead in a frightening display that heralded what was to come. More dangerous still, she had already seen the smaller sprout fires beginning to jump far ahead of the main fire, of which some had already come down in the village itself. Surprised by the lack of coordinated effort in the village, Illarna jumped from her horse and moved to the closest villager, yet she was merely waved off as she began to ask about the village leader. Frustrated, she returned to her maidens and signalled them to action, leaving only a handful to watch over the horses and supplies. Satisfied with the swift response, Illarna quickly turned back to the threat at hand and moved forth deeper into the village. Many of the villagers were surprised to see the royal red cloak at first, but few stayed long enough to find out why they had come. Before long, the entire village had succumbed to the chaotic behaviour of people scurrying about in every direction with little to no organisation. The streets had become so disorderly that everyone was tripping over one another, when suddenly the mood shifted for the worst as the fear had grown so fraught that everyone began to grab anything they could and flee. Knowing all too well the inherent danger of the chaos, Illarna moved to take swift command of the situation, realising the villagers had no idea nor any plan to defend their homes. Despite her calls to be taken to the town leaders, the confusion only grew. But it soon became clear that there was no leadership left to direct her fury, that was aside from a few ill-equipped guards who were trying to get the village back under some semblance of control. Looking at all the people, Illarna gauged the estimated size of the village to be around 1,000 souls and realised she had walked into a problem far larger than she could possibly have known. Defiant, she pushed her way to the centre of town in a further search of any semblance of leadership. But to her horror, she instead found an elderly man leaning against a bent pillar of wood, sputtering about in a strained effort to get his breath back. "Here, have a drink," Illarna said, passing over a water skin to dampen the man's throat. "May I ask what is your name, kind sir?"
"Edmund de Verley,"
he answered, still rasping for air. "Do you know where the village head is?"
"The arsehat took off with his wealth and left us all to perish,"
the old man said, shaking his head in incredulity. Illarna refrained from questioning him any further, noticing the strain in old Edmund's voice. Besides, any questions could be answered later. Now she must focus on more pressing matters. Turning to her maidens, Illarna had finally decided how she would deal with this wayward village. "Right, Valentia, Ald'athaeia, you will take your units and gather as many villagers as you are able." Taking a pause for a moment, Illarna turned her full attention to the first of the officers mentioned. "Valentia, you and your charge will be responsible for clearing the village streets, so the fire can't find leverage when it tries to spread from block to block." With a stout salute, Annika Valentia moved off with her charges, wasting no time in gathering the attention of the villagers, of whom far too many were women and children. Yet Illarna realised that in desperate times drastic actions are required. Having called their attention, Annika took a moment for the villagers to gather. Relieved at the number present, Annika grew thankful, for she knew Illarna was taking a gamble, as there was no guarantee that the villagers were going to take kindly to strangers coming in and taking command. But this, however, was a positive sign, and so in an effort to not waste the momentum, Annika continued and led her section away. Feeling the winds of change blowing through her hair, Illarna smiled as a crowd began forming around the maidens. Seizing the momentum, Illarna moved to the second and third officers with orders. Ald'athaeia, I need you to take your units and rally as many able-bodied volunteers as possible and start clearing the wheat fields from the northwestern side of Rennum. You will need to cut a strip along the edge of town, at least 10 metres wide. It will serve as a makeshift fire break. Clear to their orders, the maidens bowed and immediately moved to effect. Officer Alia Alard and her charge went straight to the fields to the west to start cutting down crops, while Nadira Astia joined her charge in spreading out across the village, gathering as many able bodies as possible.
My wife.
Edmund voiced, seizing the rare moment of silence, concern carrying on his voice. Illarna turned to him sympathetically. Sylvain will take you and your wife to the village's centre. You should be safe there for now at least. Illarna turned to Sylvain. Can you take a few maidens and set up a medical post? I doubt we will get out of this unscathed, but please keep it mobile. Who knows when we may be forced to fall back. In full agreement, Sylvain took Edmund's arm and pulled it over her shoulder and slowly got him to stand. Where will you be, La? She asked before taking her leave. Illarna smiled, pointing to the east, helping the others cut crops. My dear Edmund, Lucille exclaimed, rushing over with a chair in hand. Sitting Edmund down on the chair, Sylvain looked up at Lucille. Ma'am, my name is Sylvain Duval. I am a maiden of the Phoenix. I'm here by the will of our leader, the Lady Illarna Valenkor, daughter of Lord Illandros of the House of Valenkor and the High Lord of Valentia. Yes, we have heard many stories of the maidens and their battles, Miss Duval. It is nice to finally meet one of your order in person. I thank you for returning my husband home, though I fear there will not be much of a home once the fire reaches us. Sylvain tried to hold back a smile, but the old lady's own smile proved too contagious. We found your husband leaning against a wall not far from here, quite exhausted. Do you know what he was doing out there by himself? The old fool had it in his mind to save our home, and so set out to start clearing the streets in preparation. I tried to dissuade him, but he would not have a bar of it. I honestly feared he would not return, particularly with the village in a state of panic. Lucille looked to Edmund, but he just waved away the notion. He tried to get people to help him defend the village, but people from small places like our Rennum are easily frightened, you know. But that wouldn't stop my stubborn husband from trying now, would it? Lucille smiled proudly, yet with a hint of sadness. Your husband will no longer be fighting by himself, ma'am. Lady Illarna and the maidens are helping as we speak. On that note, Sylvain moved on to a more pressing matter. I need to get you both to a safer location. I will be setting up a medical post in the village's centre, so please gather any provisions you may need so we can head off. Annika made her way west along the chaotic streets of Rennum. However, the further she travelled, the more barren the streets became, until she finally reached a crossroads on the far western side. Noticing an adequately large open space, Annika unrolled a sheepskin map of the village, a map that was apparently borrowed from the Lord's villa by a particularly angry young man. Placing it on the wooden barrel, she studied it intently, searching for the most suitable locations to set up all the supply posts they would need to fight the fire. She knew it would be no easy matter, seeing as the location would need ready access to water from a well or aqueduct while still being close enough to the fire. Pulling a knife from her belt and pointing to a spot on the map, Annika started to give out orders to the maidens, the first being the division of force into 3 groups under the command of the most senior maidens in each. Moving the dagger along the 3 main roads running north to south, Annika started explaining her plan. Here, here, and here. We will create 3 lines of defence along these main roads. They will be our fire breaks. It looks as if we are lucky enough to have quite a few wells, and even an aqueduct along the second line, but the first will be a hard fight, for there are only a handful of wells, so we will need to split between them and use the water wisely. Please remember the aim is to not put out the fire, but to stop them from jumping the line and spreading. Annika noticed some of the locals were not understanding what she was saying, so she tried to explain it in a different way in the hopes that it would make more sense. When the fires begin to spring up ahead of the main front, do not try to fight the main blaze. Concentrate your efforts on the smaller fires in an attempt to stop it from jumping across the streets. You can try to save what you can, though it's not worth your lives. Please remember that homes can be rebuilt and possessions can be reacquired, but you only have but one life, so I advise you do not waste it. Annika reaffirmed, making sure the villagers understood. Shifting her attention back to the maidens, she continued, Arduin, you will oversee the front lines. You and your charge will be responsible for gathering as many blankets and buckets as possible. You are to set them up at each well along the road. Wasting no time, Annika turned her attention to the next maiden. Montgomery, you will oversee the second line of defence. Until then, you and your charge will be responsible for clearing the roads so there is nothing the fire can use to spread. Most of the stuff here will burn, even if the fire were to just look at it. So all the wood and other materials lying around need to be moved immediately. Once you are done, take your post and prepare the second line for immediate action. If the first line is breached, the fire will spread quickly, and the first will be forced to fall back to the third and final line to recover. Annika again moved her attention, this time to the last senior maiden. Morel, you will be overseeing the final line, which I am afraid will also be our last, for it is in the heart of the village and where the medical post will also be. If the fire breaks through there, we will not have the resources to fight it any longer in any meaningful form. Sylvain will also be at the final line, so use her overall understanding of the field to your advantage. Making sure she understands, Annika pushed her dagger into the part of the map where a thick road separates the two halves of the village. Sylvain will be here and you will be on the other side of the road right here. Do not let the fire spread past this point, though in the event that it does, evacuate the wounded immediately. Rolling up the map of the village, Annika placed her hands behind her back, giving one last speech for everyone to hear. If the fire breaches the last line of defence, Sylvain will order the retreat, for the defence would have failed. Nevertheless, hold firm, for with hope we will fight for your homes until the last minute. Looking like a pillar carved of stone, Annika looked over the crowd gathered. Listen to the maidens. They will instruct you when to fight a fire and when to leave it alone to burn, and most importantly, when it is time to move. If there is anything you are unsure of, do not hesitate to clarify with your nearest maiden. Like the very kindle that surrounded them, the peasants' hope rekindled like a beacon and began to cheer. Feeling the full weight of their hopes, Annika turned to the maidens once again, offering a final word of thought. Each one of us must give this fight our all, for only then can we expect the same to be given by these folk. Now pick out 7, get to your allocated spot and defend it until it is lost, then move back to the next rally point. In that fateful moment, the momentum within the village of Rennum had changed. The peasantry and maidens alike moved with single purpose below the emblem of the phoenix blazing defiantly, its splendor daring the impossible.